Welcome back to Keeping the Charm and Charm City. I'm so excited about today. We have a Councilwoman Phylicia Porter, who is a dedicated public servant, a community advocate, and a policymaker committed to creating a more equitable and thriving Baltimore. Representing the 10th district on the Baltimore City Council, she has been a driving force behind initiatives that focus on public health, economic development, housing stability, and community empowerment. A lifelong advocate for underserved communities, Councilwoman Porter has worked tirelessly to address systemic challenges and implement policies that create opportunities for all Baltimore residents. Her leadership has prioritized affordable housing, small business growth, workforce development, and improving access to essential city services. With a background in public health and community organizing, she brings a data-driven and people-centered approach to governance, ensuring that the voices of her constituents are heard and reflected in city policies. Through her work, Councilwoman Porter remains committed to fostering sustainable growth, strengthening neighborhoods, and keeping Baltimore's community at the heart of local government. It is such a pleasure to introduce you to my friend and Baltimore City Councilwoman Phylicia Porter.
Oh, it is so happy to be here, girl. I'm so happy. I'm so happy. I couldn't miss it. I couldn't miss
it. And what people don't know is that we already had a whole show before the show.
Right. We're like actually friends.
Like actually friends. Yeah. All right. So I love starting this off with a question. And that is, when did you fall in love with Charm City? With the Charm City?
So I'm gonna tell you a quick story. Like most people that graduate college, I wanted to get out of Baltimore. I just knew that Baltimore was too small for me. And I had my eyes set on DC. I was like, I'm going to graduate. I'm going to go to DC, get a job on the Hill, get a job in public health. And I knew that I fell in love with Charm City when I would travel back and forth on the MARC, 45 minutes. Sometimes if you travel the red line, it would be an hour and a half, 2 hours. But I would travel back to Baltimore City, and I began to have that appreciation, seeing the communities that I ride past, seeing the opportunities for growth. And I finally said, why not come back to Baltimore? Bring all your talents and gifts and resiliency back to Baltimore. And that's exactly what I did. When I left working for the federal government, I came back to Baltimore and ran for office. And it was an opportunity for me to show my love for Baltimore, but also pour back in Baltimore all that it has poured back into me. And not just from a people perspective, like my people are here, my family's here, my friends are here, my community is here. But when people think about Baltimore, they think about our grit. So my resiliency to be in any type of situation and be able to survive and thrive, but also to be successful as well. I often remind people, Baltimore produces so many leaders. And you may say that, some leaders are good versus others, but I guarantee you would never come against their leadership, because Baltimore, we've grown up in that, where we exist that.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, one, it's very common that people you go off to college and you're like, I ain't never going, I don't care where you're from. I'm never going back there. But there's so much power in returning home.
Oh, yes, it is.
It's so much. And so, a lot of times we focus so much growing up on getting out. But the truth of the matter is that's usually when our neighborhoods start to deteriorate and all of these things happen. When we come home, we can build, we can thrive, we can grow together. So I love that you came back home, but I think it's a big conversation, because it's great to go and you learn and you grow. You're not back home.
And it's so funny, when I travel for work, when I travel across the world, when I travel across this nation, I know when I step foot on BWI. I know when I set foot on Baltimore soil and I feel at home. I feel that I'm able to navigate. Now you want to talk about East or West Baltimore, that's a different story. I'm a West Baltimore born and bred. But I know when I step foot in Baltimore, and I instantly feel a calm that comes over me.
Yeah. I love that. So what inspired you to pursue public service?
Well, again, I was not checking for Baltimore. I was not checking for public service.
Yeah.
My goal when I graduated from Morgan State University, go Bears. My goal was to go on the Hill, make money, and really just live a very DC centric life. And I fell in love with public service when I began realizing to bring my talents back home. But
Mm-hmm.
it did not prompt me to run for office until I began to see where the decision makers and the power brokers are in the city of Baltimore.
Yeah.
So I often tell people when they want to run for office, one, need to figure out why you're running for office.
Mm-hmm.
Two, what is going to be your championed issue? And number three, whether you have the marathon sprint in order to take it to the next mile, because public service is not just about like the fundraisers or the pictures and things of that nature. It is really creating substantial and impactful policy for communities. Now, when I ran for office, it was a very crowded field. I remember telling Senator Antonio Hayes that I wanted to run for city council, and he said, he was like, "You sure about that?" And I was like, "Yeah, Hayes, like, yeah, Tony, like, I'm sure. My heart is calling to local service."
Yeah.
And we mapped it out with my campaign team, and it was a very crowded race. It was 8 other people in my primary. And at that time, my incumbent, former councilman Ed Reisinger, he hadn't stepped down yet, but or he hadn't, said he was going to run for reelection. It was just still up in the air. It was a very crowded race,
Yeah.
and I worked really hard and began to share my message. Initially, people weren't feeling public health, and this was pre-COVID. Like I'm gonna be real with you. When I had meetings talking to people about public health and the health implications of municipal level government,
Yeah.
they were just like, "Phylicia, that don't make sense." But then COVID happened.
Mm-hmm.
And we began to see how important one's own health care is, but also public health. So that means our parks.
Yeah.
That means our transportation system. That means the social contract for you to wear a mask and keep yourself and your family safe. That is all aspects of public health that I brought back to city government.
I love that. I've really enjoyed to watch your journey
Yeah.
through, your role in city council and really in District 10. And so I've had the pleasure of touring your district with you, riding around the whole district, but like map it out for everyone. Like where is District 10 for those who don't know or aren't aware of how really the breadth of that district, how large that is. Um, but what about District 10 keeps you excited and passionate and gets you back in the office every day?
Oh man. Well, what the kids say? If you don't know, now you know. People did not know about South Baltimore. People weren't checking for South Baltimore, and it resonated in like the levels of city services. It resonated with like people not knowing where South Baltimore is. And when I came in, I said I am going to work with neighborhood leaders, with business leaders, with just people in general across this city, so that they know the beauty of South Baltimore. When people used to talk about South Baltimore, it would be in such a very negative narrative. And for me, I knew as the leader of this district, if we're going to change the narrative of South Baltimore, if we're going to do anything related to what my vision is for South Baltimore, first we need to change how our people and our city talk about South Baltimore. And so when I talk about South Baltimore, I am talking about thriving communities that have opportunities for growth, that are on the precipice of something great. We know we got issues, of course. We know we got issues. However, I do believe in the power of the tongue. I do believe in when you talk about something, you should talk positive about it. Like, if you're not talking positive about it, how are you going to engage and empower other people to talk about it? So that's the first thing I had to do when I came in. I wanted to change the narrative, and I wanted to build upon already the existing work that had been happening for generations. Like Keisha Allen had been working as a community association president for years, changing the narrative of Westport. Michael Middleton, Navasha, and Fanon, Ken Brown, I call it termite, Michael Battle. Like these are the people that have Raheem. Sorry, like
Mhm.
Raheem, just like I can hear him in my brain. But
Like you ain't
like I'm just naming all of these people that
Yeah.
have spent years changing community. And when I came in, I said, look, how can I elevate already the existing work that you're doing? And
Mhm.
that's exactly what we did.
Mhm.
We talk about some of the housing projects that were
Mhm.
happening in the district. Um, Within my first 4 years, we had a few snafus in our first couple of years, but this next term we are going to see over 200 affordable housing homes coming to District 10. Housing was such a big issue that residents have brought to me. Having a grocery store. I opened, one of the first grocery stores in South Baltimore in 3 years at Mount Clair Junction. We are on track to bring two more to the district by the time I finish. Changing the economy of coal down in South Baltimore from an environmental justice perspective. I led the charge on a $300 million wind facility. So through that empowerment and through that community engagement, and I say all of those accomplishments not to double down on what we have done, but I say those accomplishments and I lean into those accomplishments because they were community led, but it really stemmed from community conversation and my team actualizing it and making it happen. That is the point where we need to see local government. That's where people talk about we need a community participatory budgeting, we need community
Mhm.
engagement, but
Mhm.
what does that actually look like? And we have definitely done that down here in District 10. And we still got a long way to go. Real talk. I'm not gonna lie to you,
Yeah.
but in the 4 years that we've been working, we have really began to change the narrative and change the economy of South Baltimore. And no longer is it just a place where the incinerator is.
Right.
It is a place where we are going to have a thriving community that exists all the way from now Ridgely's Delight, where Orioles and M&T Bank Stadium is, all the way down to the Anne Arundel County line in Curtis.
Yeah. And so that map is really important. And I think because there is a very large
Yes.
it's a large area.
Yeah.
And not just geographically, but there's a lot of diversity in your different neighborhoods.
Yes.
And I don't know one that people really understand that from
Yes.
how challenging that can be from a
It is.
policy perspective, but also with your community led policy
Yes.
work and all that you've done, the location of your district means that not only are you supporting those long-term residents that have been asking
Yes.
for this stuff for a long
For
time and are
years.
getting,
Yes.
the focus that they've deserved forever, right? And also, you guys are uniquely positioned right there off of 95. And, you have a transit area that brings a lot of folks to look in your neighborhoods if they are from DC or from
Yes.
other areas and want to be able to travel and jump on the highway quickly. And so, there is this, um, you know, win-win situation when it comes to
Yes.
not only those long-term residents, but folks that are looking to also join those communities
Yes.
as well. And so I like to shout that out because, a lot of people, they're looking in the pig towns, they're looking in a lot of these neighborhoods that you have in your district. I don't know if you want to
Yeah.
shout a couple out. Um,
Look,
but
I'll shout them all the way out. So we
yeah.
got Richly, again, I'm always gonna be on one. We got Richly Select, we got Pigtown, we
Mhm.
got all the way down to a smaller one, St. Paul's. Most people don't know about St. Paul's and Wilhelm. We
Mhm.
have Mall Park, we have Lakeland, we have Cherry Hill, we have Curtis Bay, we have Mount Winans,
Mhm.
we have all the way down to Hawkins Point. Like, so we have so many communities in District 10. The diversity is just crazy. And also, like, the political diversity is definitely here in District 10 as well. If you didn't learn nothing from this most recent election, the banner had actually put out a spatial map of how people voted in this last election. And what most people don't understand is that South Baltimore has about a 30 to 35 conservative Republican base in South Baltimore. And so I am a liberal
And
Democrat
probably
that
growing
believes
to put that
it is
just
growing.
that's
Exactly.
growing.
it's growing.
Yeah.
And I'm a liberal Democrat that believes in social policy and social programming for all.
Mm-hmm.
And I serve a very conservative constituency.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I'm able to kind of bridge those gaps is through government efficiency. So making sure that we have efficient government, making sure that we have the trains moving at a space and time and manner that is appropriate, but also that is worth you living in South Baltimore.
Yes.
We definitely had to get that right back on track, and we definitely did that the first 4 years as well.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up because there's a lot of new construction and a lot
Yep.
of development happening in that area. Port Covington is in your district, right?
Fort Covington. Yep. You got it.
And so there's a lot. And I'm gonna be honest, I looked at some of the houses. I love the developers who did it. I know some of them. It's a little hot, you know what I mean? It's up there. It's up
It
there.
is.
And so that
It is.
brings diversity, which
Yes.
is good. And right, I think it's important to have someone like you. And I'm not usually super political. I try to stay neutral, but this isn't a neutral comment. Um, it's important to have someone like you who is intentional
Yes.
about the full breadth
Yes.
of the community,
Oh yeah.
right? And not just following the money. I mean, to
And
be
you hit the nail right on the head, Kiara. And you know my strategy for community engagement.
Mhm.
I will tell you, all of those projects that I had mentioned have some affordable housing component. So we're looking at like $200,000 to $300,000,
Yeah,
which on a conservative is like $40,000 to $50,000 a year for an individual, and that's so important. That's why I actually came back because when we're talking about the development and the direction of said real estate projects and making sure that we have legacy residents that are able to afford it, new families that are able to afford it. We need to make sure that they are affordable. And your local representative is that person that is able to drive that conversation and ensure that it happens. The
yeah,
amount of conversations that I've had with developers, and I said, I don't think District 10 is the right district for you
hmm
because of the communities that I serve, but also my level of expectation and excellence. Because I am from Baltimore, I understand how we have to operate, but
yeah,
also we need to operate in the way that we are not displacing people as
yeah,
well. And you know that's something that I don't tolerate. And so yeah, to make sure that happens for people that are coming into Baltimore, I want them to exist and know the culture
yeah,
of Baltimore. You know, Miss Tony, 92Q. You know, like
yeah.
all the things that I grew up with that are history and legacy and the culture of Baltimore.
Yeah, I love that. And so part of for me when I think about the culture of Baltimore, there's so many different aspects to it. But one is local entrepreneurship,
Oh
small
yes,
business, like
yes.
that grit, that grind, that resilience, all those types of things. So talk to us a little bit about your support of small business growth
Yes.
in your district.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll first start out, for all my Baltimore, we get our hair done. If you've never been in a hair shop and have somebody come in
Yes.
and bring the socks, bring the perfumes, bring the
Yes.
incense,
Open up the jacket up.
we open up the jacket, open up the duffel bag.
Yeah.
That's a lost economy as well. And I
Yeah.
will tell you, growing up, I experienced that, but I saw firsthand how entrepreneurship, particularly of micro businesses, so businesses less than 50, and I would even take it down a little more, businesses less than 10 employees really drive Baltimore's economy.
Yeah.
Most people focus on the larger institutions and the larger organizations, but we have, I believe the last number that I saw was around about 5 to 8,000 micro businesses in the city of Baltimore. And so my support of them is not just making sure that they have a space, but also making sure that they have connection to city government. They have connection to my office for any types of local grants or contracting opportunities. We have actually handpicked and match made organizations with other organizations so that we are keeping the local economy connected as well. One of the other, issues that we talk about is just the expectation of small businesses to exist as larger businesses.
Yeah.
I don't exist in that model.
Right.
So small businesses need the support for where they are. And so,
Mhm.
for example, we had an issue down in Cherry Hill, like with the candy buses.
Mm.
So, people were like, "Oh, Phylicia, the HUD, there were government agencies coming down, getting rid of these candy buses." So I worked with Cherry Hill Strong and the community to get them licensed,
Yeah.
to get them, to get them verified and licensed with the health department, to
Yeah.
get them on a pathway so that they are able to still exist in the culture of community.
Mm.
Um, we need to have people that stand up and say, no, let me help you get to a space where it is quote unquote legal. So you have those papers that you are able to point to for your inspection for safety reasons only. We need to.
Right.
I'm not saying that we need to make sure that that happens.
Sure.
But what I am saying is that I've provided technical assistance to just navigate through the city process. You'll be surprised how many people give up a micro business or give up their business in general for simply
Paperwork.
lack of knowledge navigating
Yeah.
through city process, city
Yeah.
permitting.
Hmm.
Like we provide that lane because that's within our power and jurisdiction. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so important, and we know how money flows in our communities, and so being intentional about that is critically important. Um, and speaking of how the flow goes, when it comes to funding and being able to do the work that you do, there's a lot of shifts happening
Oh yeah.
all over, right? From federal government,
Yep.
clearly, right? I think I've been so burned out by the headlines that I don't even talk about nothing. Nobody's seen me on the internet in weeks, months maybe. And so it's just so much going on. But even at the
Yes.
state level, like there's a lot of changes
Yes.
happening all the way through. And we were
Yes.
talking about this earlier, like with all the progress that you've made in District 10 thus far, even in Baltimore City, all
Yeah.
the progress you've made over the last however many years, what impacts are you seeing
Oh
that
yeah.
could have on the continued progress that the momentum, I
Yeah.
guess. I don't think we can stop the train, right? But
Yeah.
there's a lot of tough ways to make it damn near harder, right?
Definitely.
To keep
Definitely.
it moving. So
Yeah.
what are you seeing? How are you feeling about some of the shifts that we're seeing right now?
Yeah, and I'm thinking about that
Mhm.
even more as we're beginning to see some of the effects from the federal level. But
Yeah.
I'll just first start by saying elections have consequences.
Yeah.
Elections have consequences, and I want to double down on that because when we're talking about and not just from a constituency perspective as well, from a democratic operative perspective, elections have consequences. And so now we have to retool and reimagine the Democratic Party, what our message is, making sure that it's more in line with folks every day. If
Mhm.
I hear the price of eggs and milk one more time, and yeah, but that's a real that's a real message that Republicans are leaning into,
Mhm.
and it is going to have drastic effects for the city of Baltimore. Just speaking frankly for District 10, we've had some of our funding related to our eviction prevention assistance, mortgage prevention assistance, even down to some of our projects. We are in jeopardy and from a federal and state perspective. And
Mhm.
I'll tell you, we've been here before.
Mhm.
I'm not at a space where I'm like, oh, we just about to like just run up, be about to run up shop. Not
Yeah.
that ain't it. We've been here before. I think that this is an opportunity for us to continue proving that Baltimore will thrive in these very challenging times. And that's the posture that I'm taking. I know some of my colleagues on the council, that is the posture that they are taking as well. And we just gonna keep it moving. I think that, I don't want to undermine or invalidate that these next 4 years are going to be very difficult. But I believe that, in my creativity. I believe in my power of negotiation across the aisle. I believe in my excellence of making sure that, my people in my city are in line with whatever is coming down, and protecting them in a way from a legal perspective, protecting them to ensure that we will be okay after these 4 years. And so
Yeah.
it's going to be some shifts, but I'm not going to just throw in the towel just yet.
Yeah, and I didn't expect you to, right? And I think what's great with what I think is really great about Baltimore is goes back to what you said before about being
Oh yeah,
from Baltimore. We are resilient,
we gonna
right?
be
We
all
have
right. What Kendrick
grit, we
say?
have
No,
grind,
Kendrick.
huh?
What Kendrick say? We gonna be all right.
We gonna be all
We
right.
gonna be
We
all
gonna be
right.
all right. You
Be all
know,
right.
we bobbing and weaving, and we're gonna keep
Yes,
it moving. And
yes,
we didn't come this far just to come this far.
yes, exactly.
And so I love that that's the perspective, and that's what I've been telling like our inner circle, our
Mm,
next gen, the people that talk to us all the time when we're not on the internet, right? We've had
mhm.
very direct conversations
Yeah.
about what's happening, the
Mhm.
impact specifically to a city like Baltimore, where
Yes.
we have a huge healthcare,
As it
economy
relates.
here
Yep.
that's been impacted by a lot of things. We have a very strong and growing and frankly thriving Hispanic community
Yes.
in the city.
Yes.
And so that is, and so there's a lot of different ways that the
Yes.
city is, can be impacted about what's
Yeah.
happening at the federal level. And then we have
Yep.
budget shifts on the state level. And there's a
Yes.
lot of, things that happen in the city through the funding at the state.
Yep.
And so,
And
look,
I
I
mean,
mean,
I'm,
we
and I'm
done
gonna
did a
tell
whole
you,
lot with literally
whole
nothing.
lot.
When we weren't even in the map of Maryland. So,
No, it's a whole lot. And I'll tell you two things. I often tell people, but we have such brilliance here in Baltimore.
yes,
You
yes,
know, I will just highlight, an individual who I've been looking at for the past year and a half.
hmm
The city solicitor, Ebony Thompson, who
yes,
one woman, one woman is bringing back upwards of $1 billion to the city of Baltimore.
yeah, yep,
Like, let that sink in. She has led a team for the past year and a half going against some of the largest pharmaceutical companies to tackle the opioid crisis here in the city of Baltimore. We have some very brilliant people in the eds and meds that are literally fighting. I mean, from a legal perspective, from a programmatic perspective, fighting against some of those just, I'm trying to use my words, those shifts.
hmm
Thank you.
yes. I was going to
Those
help
shifts.
you.
Look. I always bring a good word, but those shifts at the federal level to
Yeah,
ensure that we are protected,
yep,
and that's what gives me the power to keep doing what I'm doing. When we see at the state level the delegates and senators literally working
oh yeah,
around the clock, like those legislators are working around the clock to balance this budget.
yep,
That's what gives me the power to keep going. When we have, a mayor and a city council president that are working in collaboration, I see my colleagues here,
yep,
7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, not leaving until 6 and 7 o'clock at night, working on constituent level issues and their teams.
yep.
Like, that's what gives me the power. And so, like, we may, whatever's happening, we gonna be all right, because I believe in the brilliance and the scholarly excellence of those in Baltimore. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna
Look,
let that.
look,
I'm gonna let it
I
simmer.
know.
I'm gonna let it simmer. I might clip that back
I
in and make sure
do.
everybody hears it again. We're gonna make
I
sure.
do.
No,
I mean, because
absolutely,
they're some of the leaders in their field.
absolutely,
They are.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what I think people need to know and understand is
Yes.
that, we finna get it regardless.
Regardless.
Regardless. We are
Regardless.
going and we are growing and we are doing the
Mhm.
things that we need to do for our legacy residents and for
Yes.
the growth of
For the
Baltimore,
people here.
period.
Period. And I mean, one of the things that I shared that I serve a very different constituency than those my colleagues,
Yeah.
and one of the resounding statements that I'm hearing from each and every person is that
hmm
we just want Baltimore to get better.
hmm
So, even people that don't agree with our approach, they don't agree, voice your opinion. But for me and my office, we will always have an opportunity to sit down with you because you may uncover something that I may not have looked at. Like that's just being a humble leader.
Yeah.
That's just being a leader with humility, a leader that can have an open mind. You know, we just got to get clear on the approach moving forward. But I truly believe that if we just find some sort of commonality, we really can move the city forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second we focus on the issues and take all the other
Yes.
distractions out of the conversation, everybody wants the grocery store. Right? You know what I mean? Everybody wants
Hmm.
to have, access to,
Yes.
what they need. Everyone wants
Yes.
the cornerstone of what makes a community a community.
Yes.
And so all the other stuff is just a bunch of it's just you know what I mean?
Huh?
It's just a bunch of
Yeah.
foolishness. Ain't nobody, whatever.
But I
Um,
mean, but seriously, I mean that has really like helped my success. Like
yeah.
I share, like there are people in District 10 that don't like what I look like because
Mhm.
I'm a black woman,
Yeah.
and I'm able to have that conversation with them. I'm able to find common ground because that's my job. Like taking the feelings out of it. Your job is to serve the public.
Yep.
That is your job. So everything else, like you said, all those feelings, put them aside. You gotta remain focused on the mission at hand. And
Yeah.
that's where I think these 4 years are gonna take Baltimore, but they're also gonna take the state and federal level as well. We gotta focus on the mission of public service and the mission of what we're doing in these communities despite the distractions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in that same vein, what policies or initiatives are you most excited about that are
Okay.
going to have
Well,
this long lasting impact?
yeah, man. First and foremost, I am working really hard on the opioid crisis,
Yeah.
along with Mayor Scott and
Yeah.
Council President Cohen. I am one of two council members that are on the opioid restitution board, and it's really a awesome opportunity for me because it is marrying my professional experience. Thanks, mom.
Mhm.
Thanks, mom and dad. But it's also bringing my community engagement perspective as well. And so I am working on 4 legislative hearings once the abatement gets passed down and finalized, working on 4 legislative hearings to see how we got here, what we're doing, and how we're going to get out of this, how we're going to get out of this public health crisis, and not just from the very accessory topics of harm reduction, but I am looking at the substance abuse and recovery homes. I'm
Mhm.
looking at psychiatric rehabilitation programs and how they have added to it. I'm
Mhm.
looking at what state level integration on some of our programming here in the city of Baltimore. I'm looking at our quality of life issues because the generations that have changed because of this crisis is so profound, and I see it. We see it every single day, but my hope is that over these next 15 to 20 and beyond, we'll be able to see the changes that we are implementing right now. Number two is making sure that we have that food access issue. Like you were saying, everybody want a grocery store,
Mhm.
but we need to really understand the economics of community, what that looks like, and that can be traditional or non-traditional economics. And I'm saying that from a space of, some of the non-traditional economics are looking at the community gardens and elevating said space into a collaborative for a brick and mortar for a supermarket. So really thinking creatively how we're going to do those things. And lastly, from a clean air perspective, really attacking how we are doing business um, in the city as it relates to environmental justice. So those are the 3 issues that I'm going to be definitely actively focused on personally. But I will tell you, as being chair of the Public Health and Environment Committee, my committee is doing such great work. They are focusing on some issues as it relates to built environment, and not just built environment just from a housing perspective, but built environment from a psychology perspective of like how many parks we need in our
Yeah.
neighborhoods. What do trees look like within reason? I'm gonna put that out there within reason.
Streets are high. People don't know
We
that
still
until you
we,
do this
we
work.
still
It's
gotta pay
expensive.
for that maintenance, y'all. We
Yes.
still gotta pay for that maintenance.
Yes.
But what that built environment looks like, but also what persons experiencing homelessness looks
Mhm.
like, what that oversight and what that additional programming and excellence looks like within our government agencies for homeless services, what that looks like. So, we're definitely moving in a very positive way. And I will probably say, I'm biased, but my committee members are really working hard to address those public health and environment challenges in the city. And I'm grateful that I've been called upon in leadership to this position.
Yeah, that is really, really important. And I think, and for those of folks who don't know, can you kind of do like a quick Spark Notes version of the opioid crisis, like that lawsuit, just to give
Yeah,
like a high level on what happened and
sure.
what's driving all that?
Sure. So just to give you a little bit of background, our city sued the pharmaceutical companies, and we were very successful with proving that the city of Baltimore was not at fault for said crisis. And so what that means is pharmaceutical companies coming into Baltimore, knowing the scourge of issues that were happening as it relates to the pharmaceutical boom,
Hmm.
and we were very successful in that. So over the past 6 weeks, City Solicitor Ebony Thompson and her team have been able to provide that successful metric of litigation, and they were also able to bring back funds from the pharmaceutical company with that settlement. And so now we are currently in an abatement process. And so with that abatement process, that is where the judge is going to additionally look at the settlement dollars and add to those funds for the city of Baltimore. And I
Yeah.
believe right now we are just in such a good space to really change how those settlement dollars are moving within the city. The mayor, through an executive order, has set up a opioid restitution fund. So the board, the opioid restitution fund board, advisory board, excuse me, they are the recommenders. They're the subject matter experts to show how these funds should be spent as it relates to opioid crisis, and not just from a healthcare perspective, but from an overall holistic perspective. That can be education, transportation, prevention, treatment, any and everything touching the opioid crisis. This advisory board is going to be providing that direction.
Yeah. And the reason why I wanted folks to understand, because, Baltimore, there's a narrative, right? And that narrative has been supported by a lot of issues that have been systemic. And I kind
Yes.
of put this opioid
Yep.
crisis issue in my head. It started to join that
Yes.
grouping of
Yes.
systemic issues that have defined Baltimore in one way
Yes.
or the other,
Yes.
but wasn't its people's fault,
Yes.
right? And so I encourage folks, if you're watching this, like Google it, like look it
Yeah.
up and see.
Talk to me. I'll actually like meet you for coffee.
Yeah,
Once I'm able to formally talk about it, talk about the issue, because we can't talk about it right now because it's
yeah,
still going through
it's open.
litigation.
Yeah,
But once we're able to formally talk about it, like, you're gonna see a community engagement plan and strategy that really brings people into the fold to show how we got here. Like, I think people are just like, oh, we just got here just because. No, that is not the case.
mm-mm.
And so we'll be able to share the city's responses, what we've been doing so far, but also what we could be doing in the future as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really big deal, and I don't know that people know
Yeah.
really what happened behind that, and
No.
why Baltimore City won that legal
Yes.
battle, and what that means, even for us, for like an area like South Baltimore,
Oh
where
yeah.
you drive in South. There's areas where you drive through
Yes.
South Baltimore, and you see that it's been hit very hard,
Yes. Very hard.
by the opioid crisis, and so yeah, that's a big deal. So I won't say nothing crazy like I usually could, because I'm not finna get you in
Look,
trouble.
Ebony, I'm doing my good. I'm doing good, girl. She's our attorney. She's our
Yes,
attorney. So
yes,
she's like, Alicia. But I
yeah.
love her though. And
Good.
I take her word very seriously, because
I
I
would like to stay
believe,
on her good side too.
yeah, I believe she is one of the most brilliant minds that we have in Baltimore.
I love that. I love that. So tell me, kind of as we kind of transition. Actually, let me ask you this: what's your biggest goal for the district in
Mm.
2025?
biggest goal in the district,
Mm-hmm.
to remain collaborative and cohesive.
Love it.
That's my biggest goal. We have a lot of eyes, which is great. A lot of eyes and spotlight on South Baltimore. I want my communities to remain cohesive and collaborative because as I am moving, as I'm leading this district, there's going to be enough for everyone, and coming from a place of abundance
Yes.
as opposed to scarcity. So that is my biggest goal for my communities.
Yes. I love that. Um,
You know, I was going to have to drop it on it.
I know. I'm like, I love it.
Fully.
Um, what are you most proud of when you think about how you have been able to keep the charm in Charm City?
Yeah, so probably that I am still showing up to work.
Yeah.
The first 4 years of my administration were very challenging with the Brooklyn mass shooting, with the Key Bridge collapse. That all happened in District 10. And for a while, my mental health started to suffer because of it. I said, being a leader in this space and feeling it and feeling people, you're going to take it quite literally and quite seriously, very hard.
Yeah.
And so there was a point in time, I remember there was a point in time where one of my friends said, you got to take a step back, get yourself together, and then come back even harder.
Yeah.
And that was a very pivotal point for me because most leaders, they just keep going without that evaluation, without that self correcting, or without having the people around you that really know you. And they're like, yeah, you got to take a bop. You got to take a bop to get yourself together. This ain't you.
Yeah.
And the fact that I'm still showing up every day, I'm still remaining steadfast, I'm still excited about public service. That is something that like I'll just hold true, and I'll tell you it has really changed not only my perspective about public service, but also breaking through the celebrity of being an elected official.
Mm-hmm.
We feel just like everybody else. You should be feeling. You should be feeling like everybody else. And me, I feel like everybody else. And I am human just like everybody else. And I require I require grace, but also when you lead people, to have all of that on your shoulders, giving your own self grace,
Mm-hmm.
that's real.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, just showing up every single day with that renewed sense of public service and that renewed definition of public service, that's what gets me excited.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of the growth in District 10. I feel like there are some Black women in the city that I adore. And you are one of those people who I know is locked in, finna stay locked in and do whatever it is.
I ain't got no choice now. We
Yeah,
married.
well, that too.
We
Well,
married. I ain't got no choice.
you really locked in. But you're gonna do what you have to do, and
Yeah.
that's not always easy, and
Yeah.
behind the scenes is not always cute. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, right, there's work to be done, and
Yes.
I think as Black women, I know as Black women that isn't always recognized or
Yes.
understood or
Yep.
honored.
Yes.
And so I honor you. I
Oh,
appreciate you. I love the work that's been happening all across your
yeah.
district. We have the
I
benefit
love
of
you.
some of your communities, and
Yeah.
it's been an amazing ride, and I just can't wait to see where not only District 10's going, but you as an individual and a leader and someone who's done just such amazing work in honestly a short amount of time, because it's crazy it's only been like 4 years. So I wanted to take that moment because sometimes we don't get as many moments as we deserve.
No,
So.
I appreciate that. And I feel the exact same way about you. For you all, I've watched Charm City. I've watched Charm City buyers come on the scene, take over the game, and I remember having those initial conversations with you. So I feel the exact same way. Feel the exact same way about you. Yeah. So you about to don't make me cry.
No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that.
We're not doing that.
No. We're not doing that. So thank you for joining And I am so excited to continue to support you. And for everyone watching, we will see you next time.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye.